The day I watched my cousin Thaddeus tell my 78-year-old grandmother she wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner in her own home was the day something broke inside me. For 5 decades, Nana Eliza had poured her soul into creating magical holidays. For our family, her special rosemary bread, hand-knitted stockings for every new baby, and the way she transformed that old maple-floored Victorian into a wonderland that smelled of cinnamon and love. She'd given us everything, sacrificed endlessly, and now they were tossing her aside like yesterday's leftovers. What they didn't know was that I had discovered something in Nana's attic, something that would turn their greedy little world upside down. Sometimes, justice comes wrapped in unexpected packages, and I was about to deliver it right on their doorstep. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Adelaide Thornwood, and I've always been the family. Disappointment. While my cousins pursued prestigious careers in medicine and law, I became a freelance photographer specializing in architectural preservation. Fascinating to me, but thoroughly unimpressive to my status-obsessed relatives. At family gatherings, I was the one whose accomplishments were glossed over in favor of cousin Thaddeus's latest promotion or his wife Vivian's charity gala appearances. None of that ever bothered me much. I loved my work documenting America's vanishing historical buildings, and I cherished my independence. But what did bother me, what kept me awake at night, was watching how they treated Nana Eliza. Eliza Calloway grew up during the Depression in rural Vermont, the daughter of a school teacher and a carpenter. She married young, had 4 children, and was widowed by 35 when my grandfather's heart gave out one cold February morning. Left alone with little money and 4 small children, she turned her talent for cooking into a catering business that put all her children through college. The sprawling Victorian on Winterberry Lane had been her sanctuary, her workplace, and the center of our family universe. Every Christmas Eve for 50 years, 4 generations gathered beneath its gabled roof. Nana's golden turkey, her cranberry orange, relish made from her mother's recipe, the steamed pudding that took 3 days to prepare. These weren't just dishes, they were threads connecting us through time. Even when I was living abroad, I'd fly halfway around the world rather than miss Christmas at Nana's. 3 years ago, Thaddeus and Vivian suggested moving into the east wing of Nana's house. Both successful professionals in their 50s with grown children, they claimed they worried about Nana living alone. "It's a practical solution," Thaddeus had said in that reasonable tone he reserved for business negotiations. "The house is too much for her to maintain. We'll take care of everything, and she can enjoy her golden years without worries." Nana had seemed hesitant, but eventually agreed. I should have seen the warning signs, how quickly they renovated the east wing to their taste, how the antique furniture Nana treasured was gradually moved to the attic and replaced with Vivian's modern pieces, how they began referring to it as our house in casual conversation. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened last week. I'd been in Arizona photographing mission architecture and had just returned to New England when my phone lit up with a group text from Vivian. "Christmas Eve gathering at our home this year will be intimate, immediate family only. We're focusing on creating a peaceful holiday environment. Details to follow for those included." I immediately called my cousin Imogen, Nana's oldest granddaughter, who confirmed she'd received the same message. "Adelaide, something's wrong," Imogen said, her voice tight with concern. "I spoke to Thaddeus yesterday about bringing Mom's new sweet potato casserole, and he said Nana won't be hosting Christmas this year because it's too much for her. But when I asked to speak to Nana directly, he said she was at a doctor's appointment." "That's strange," I replied, a knot forming in my stomach. "Nana never goes to doctors in December. She always says she's too busy preparing for Christmas." "Exactly. And get this. When I called back this morning, Vivian answered and told me Nana wouldn't be joining the Christmas dinner at all this year. Said Dr. Blackwood recommended minimizing holiday stress, and they're taking her to some senior community Christmas lunch instead. Dr. Blackwood? In 40 years, I'd never heard this name. Nana had seen the same family physician, Dr. Abernathy, since before I was born. I'm going over there, I decided immediately. Something doesn't add up. I drove straight to Winterberry Lane from the airport, my rental car crunching over fresh snow in the long driveway. The house looked magnificent as always, its Victorian details highlighted with tasteful white lights, a far cry from Vivian's usual preference for modernist simplicity. Thaddeus opened the door, surprise flickering across his face before he composed himself. Adelaide, we weren't expecting you. Clearly, I replied, stepping past him into the foyer. The familiar scent of pine and cinnamon was missing, replaced by an artificial vanilla fragrance. Where's Nana? Eliza is resting. Vivian emerged from the living room, cashmere sweater perfectly coordinated with her silk pants. Dr. Blackwood adjusted her medication yesterday, and she needs quiet. She lowered her voice to a theatrical whisper. The early stages of cognitive decline are so difficult. We're trying to minimize disruptions to her routine. My skin prickled, with unease. Cognitive decline? Since when? Last month she recited Robert Frost from memory when we spoke on the phone. The onset can be quite sudden, Thaddeus interjected smoothly. Dr. Blackwood has been monitoring her closely. We're just following medical advice. I'd like to see her, I stated firmly. Now isn't a good time, Vivian replied. Perhaps tomorrow, after her morning medication has... Adelaide? Nana's voice floated down from the grand staircase. Is that you? I turned to see my grandmother descending the stairs, one hand on the walnut banister I'd helped her polish every Christmas Eve of my childhood. She looked smaller somehow, her silver hair pulled back in a simple bun rather than her usual elegant twist. But her eyes, those clear blue eyes that had witnessed nearly 8 decades of life, were as sharp as ever. Nana! I rushed to her, embracing her familiar softness. She smelled of lavender and lemon, the same scent she'd worn my entire life. What a wonderful surprise, she smiled, though I noticed a flicker of anxiety as she glanced toward Thaddeus. No one told me you were coming. Spur of the moment, I replied, studying her face. I missed you, and I wanted to talk about Christmas plans. Something passed across her features, a shadow of sadness quickly concealed. Oh, well, things are different this year. Thaddeus and Vivian think it's best if I don't host. Too much? Excitement, you know. You love excitement, I countered gently. Christmas is your favorite time of year. Mother. Thaddeus's voice carried a warning tone I'd never heard him use with Nana before. Remember what Dr. Blackwood said about getting overwrought. I'm not overwrought, Nana replied with a flash of her old spirit. I'm talking to my granddaughter. Why don't we sit in the sunroom? I suggested, taking her arm. You can catch me up on everything. Before either Thaddeus or Vivian could object, I guided Nana toward the back of the house, to the glass-enclosed room that had always been her favorite. Once a solarium filled with her prized orchids and ferns, it had been transformed into a sleek entertainment space with a flat-screen television and minimalist furniture. What happened to your plants? I asked quietly as we settled on an uncomfortable-looking white sofa. Vivian said they attracted insects, Nana sighed. They're in the garden shed, though I doubt they'll survive the winter there. We talked for nearly an hour, and with each passing minute my concerns deepened. Nana's mind was crystal clear. She remembered details about my recent travels that I'd mentioned only in passing during our last call, asked thoughtful questions about the mission architecture I'd been photographing, and even quoted passages from a book we'd discussed months ago. But something had changed. The confident woman who had ruled her kitchen and her life with quiet authority seemed diminished, deferential. When Vivienne entered to announce lunch would be served shortly, Nana immediately stopped mid-sentence and nodded compliantly. Nothing. Heavy for Eliza, Vivienne instructed me as if Nana weren't present. Dr. Blackwood's dietary restrictions are quite specific. Since when do you follow dietary restrictions? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I asked Nana once Vivienne had left. You always said life's too short to skip dessert. A ghost of her familiar smile appeared. They mean well, dear, and it's their house now. What do you mean, their house? This has been your home for 50 years. Nana's hands twisted in her lap. Thaddeus convinced me it made sense to transfer the deed. The property taxes were becoming such a burden, and they promised I could stay in my suite for life. The paperwork was so complicated, pages and pages of legal terms. I thought I was just signing a living arrangement, but apparently. Her voice trailed off. My blood ran cold. When did this happen? Last spring, after that bout of pneumonia. I was still quite weak, and they brought in their lawyer friend, Mr. Holloway. He explained everything, though I confess I was tired that day and might not have followed all the details. I struggled to keep my voice level. Does Imogen know about this? Or Uncle Thomas? Nana's oldest son, my uncle, was a retired judge who would have easily spotted any legal manipulation. Thaddeus said it was simpler to handle it quietly, just between us. Less fuss that way. She patted my hand. Don't worry so much, Adelaide. I have my suite upstairs and they take good care of me. And this Dr. Blackwood, when did you start seeing him? Her, Nana corrected. Dr. Janessa. Blackwood. She's a specialist Vivienne knows from her charity work. Very expensive, very exclusive practice. They insisted I needed specialized care. I was about to press further when Thaddeus appeared in the doorway. Lunch is served, he announced. Adelaide, you're welcome to join us, though we weren't expecting. You in the meal planning. How gracious, I replied, my tone matching his in false politeness. I wouldn't miss it. Lunch was a tense affair. The dining room that had once hosted boisterous family gatherings was now a study in austere elegance. Nana's cherished Spode Christmas dishes were nowhere to be seen, replaced by minimalist white plates. Vivienne served a meal that looked like it belonged in a health spa brochure: poached fish, steamed vegetables, and brown rice. Where's Nana's Christmas china? I asked casually, watching their reactions. Packed away, Vivienne replied smoothly. Too delicate for everyday use. But Christmas is coming. Surely you'll use them then. We're going with a more contemporary aesthetic this year, Thaddeus interjected. Vivienne has commissioned a tablescape designer who's worked with several Boston socialites. Nana said nothing, poking at her unseasoned fish with diminished interest. After lunch, I excused myself to use the restroom, but instead slipped up the grand staircase to the third floor where Nana's suite was located. What I found broke my heart. The spacious rooms where she had once maintained a sitting area, bedroom, private bath, and small library had been reduced to a single bedroom and bath. The sitting room now sported exercise equipment with Vivienne's monogram towels draped over the handles. Worse, Nana's personal treasures were diminished. The wall of family photographs was gone, her collection of first edition New England poetry volumes nowhere to be seen. Her antique writing desk, the one her father had made for her 16th birthday, had been replaced by a generic white table. I continued exploring, making my way to the attic. If I knew Nana, she wouldn't have let them discard her treasured possessions entirely. Sure enough, the attic was filled with carefully wrapped furniture, labeled boxes of china and silver, and stacked photo albums. In the far corner, partially hidden behind a rolled carpet, I spotted her writing desk. Something compelled me to examine it more closely. The desk had always fascinated me as a child, with its multitude of small drawers and hidden compartments. Nana had shown me once how to press a certain decorative element to reveal a secret drawer where she kept her most important documents. Heart pounding, I located the hidden latch and pressed. The small compartment slid open, revealing a stack of papers bound with faded blue ribbon. On top was a sealed envelope addressed in Nana's elegant handwriting. For Adelaide, in case of emergency. Why me? I was neither the oldest grandchild nor the most accomplished. But I'd always been closest to Nana, spending summers with her when my parents traveled for work, learning her recipes and family stories while my cousins pursued summer internships and prestigious camps. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter dated just 3 months ago. My dearest Adelaide, if you're reading this, then my fears have been realized. Thaddeus and Vivian are not what they seem. Their concern masks control. Their care disguises calculation. When they moved in, I believed their intentions were good. But I've overheard conversations that chill me to the bone. They speak of my cognitive decline when they think I cannot hear, discuss medications I've never been prescribed, and plan a future where decisions about my life and home are entirely in their hands. Last spring, they presented papers they claimed were for tax purposes. I signed, trusting family as I always have. Later, I discovered they had tricked me into signing over the deed to my home. But there is something they don't know. Something my own father arranged decades ago. Beneath this letter, you'll find the true property documents. The Victorian and the land it stands on were placed in an irrevocable family trust by my father in 1963. While I have enjoyed life tenancy, the house can never truly be sold or transferred outside the trust. Any document suggesting otherwise is legally invalid. More troubling still are the new medications they insist I take daily, pills that leave me foggy and compliant. I've been secretly disposing of them, but they grow more vigilant in watching me swallow them. If they've turned against me completely, if Christmas celebrations that have been sacred to our family for generations are now denied me, then the time has come to reveal the truth. I've always seen in you a spirit that reminds me of myself. In younger days, you value truth over appearance, substance over status. This is why I entrust this task to you, rather than others who might be swayed by Thaddeus's position or Vivian's social connections. The legal documents you need are secured with my longtime attorney, Marian Winters, whose contact information is enclosed. She has instructions to act upon your request. With love and trust, your Nana. Beneath the letter was a business card for Marian Winters, elder law specialist, and several folded documents that appeared to be trust paperwork from the 1960s. I sat back on my heels, mind racing. The implications were staggering. Not only had Thaddeus and Vivian manipulated Nana into signing away her home under false pretenses, but they were potentially medicating her without proper cause, perhaps even to create the very symptoms they claimed to be treating. Adelaide, where are you? Vivian's voice echoed up the stairwell. Quickly, I photographed each document with my phone, then carefully returned everything to the secret compartment except the attorney's business card, which I slipped into my pocket. Coming, I called, making my way down from the attic. Back. In the main part of the house, I found Vivian waiting with thinly veiled impatience. We were concerned when we couldn't find you. Wandering through private areas of the home isn't really appropriate. Private areas? I raised an eyebrow. You mean the home where I spent every Christmas of my life? The home my great-grandfather built? Things change, she replied coolly. Thaddeus and I have invested considerably in updating and maintaining this property. We value our privacy. I'm sure you do, I replied, matching her tone. I need to head out soon, but I'd like a few moments alone with Nana to say goodbye. She's resting now, Vivian countered. Perhaps next time you could call ahead so we can arrange a more suitable visiting schedule. I'll just peek in and say, "Goodbye," I insisted, already moving toward the stairs. I won't wake her if she's truly asleep. I found Nana in her reduced bedroom, sitting in a chair by the window, staring out at the snow-covered gardens. She turned when I entered, relief washing over her face. "I was afraid they'd convinced you to leave without saying goodbye," she said softly. I sat on the ottoman at her feet, taking her hands in mine. They felt cold. "Nana, I found your letter. I understand what's happening." Her fingers tightened around mine. "Be careful, Adelaide. They're very powerful in this town. Now, Thaddeus sits on the hospital board, and Vivian is involved with half the charitable foundations in the county." "I don't care if they own the whole town," I replied fiercely. "What they're doing is wrong, and possibly illegal. Are they forcing you to take medication you don't need?" She glanced anxiously at the door before lowering her voice. "Dr. Blackwood prescribed something for anxiety and age-related confusion. But Adelaide, I'm not confused. I'm not anxious. At least I wasn't. Until they started changing everything, taking over my life bit by bit. What about Christmas? Do you really want to skip the family gathering?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It breaks my heart. 50 years without missing a single Christmas Eve celebration in this house. All those recipes, the traditions. I started preparing in October, ordering the special ingredients, planning the menu." A single tear slipped down her cheek. "Last week, Vivian told me she'd already donated my Christmas dishes to the church rummage sale. Said they were outdated and I wouldn't be needing them anymore." My resolve hardened. "I'm going to fix this, Nana. I promise you. But I need a little time. Can you hold on for a few more days? And please, be careful with those medications." She straightened slightly, a hint of her old determination returning. "I've lived through worse than these two, my dear. Do what you need to do. I'll be waiting." As I prepared to leave, Thaddeus intercepted me in the foyer. "I hope you found everything." "Satisfactory," he said, his tone suggesting the opposite. "Actually, I have some concerns about Nana's care," I replied directly. "She doesn't seem like herself." His expression hardened. "Dr. Blackwood is a respected geriatric specialist. Eliza's condition is being properly managed." "Her condition?" The woman recites poetry from memory and recalls details from conversations months ago. "What exactly is wrong with her, according to this doctor?" "Early-stage dementia presents in complex ways," he replied dismissively. "Laypeople often don't recognize the symptoms. I'd like to speak with Dr. Blackwood directly." "Patient." "Confidentiality would prevent any meaningful discussion," he countered smoothly. "But rest assured, we are following medical guidance to the letter. And the Christmas celebration, why exclude Nana from her own tradition?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The holiday excitement is too stimulating in her condition. Dr. Blackwood specifically recommended a quiet, controlled environment. And the rest of the family? The cousins? The great-grandchildren? Why exclude them as well?" "We're prioritizing Eliza's needs over sentimentality," he replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a conference call scheduled." As he opened the front door in clear dismissal, I turned back to him. "One more thing, Thaddeus. When exactly did Nana sign over the house to you?" His expression flickered slightly, before settling back into composed certainty. "Last spring. Everything was handled properly, I assure you. Mother was quite clear about her wishes to relieve herself of the burden of home ownership." "How convenient for you," I observed. "Well, I'll be in touch. Very soon." From my car, I called Marion Winters's office and secured an appointment for first thing the next morning. Then I reached out to Imogen and my other cousins, filling them in on what I'd discovered. By evening, a family coalition was forming, one that excluded Thaddeus and Vivienne. The next morning, Marion Winters reviewed the photos of the documents I'd found, comparing them with records from her firm's archives. Her conclusion was unequivocal. The irrevocable trust established by Winston Calloway in 1963 is still legally binding, she confirmed. Your grandmother has life tenancy, with the property held in trust for future generations. Any deed transfer signed by her alone would be invalid since she doesn't hold transferable title to the property. So, Thaddeus and Vivian don't actually own the house? Not only do they not own it, but as trustee, I'm obligated to protect the trust's assets against precisely this type of manipulation. She tapped her pen thoughtfully against her desk. Additionally, if your grandmother was coerced or misled about what she was signing, that raises serious questions of elder abuse and possible fraud. What about this Dr. Blackwood? Can she prescribe medication if Nana doesn't actually have any cognitive issues? Marion's expression darkened. That's potentially even more serious. Administering unnecessary medication to create symptoms or increase dependency could constitute criminal behavior. We should involve Adult Protective Services immediately. Over the next week, we built our case methodically. I arranged for Nana to be evaluated by an independent geriatric specialist who found no evidence of cognitive impairment. Marion filed emergency motions to invalidate any purported property transfer and to install me as Nana's temporary healthcare proxy. Most shocking was what we discovered about Dr. Janessa Blackwood. While she was indeed a licensed physician, her specialty wasn't geriatrics, but cosmetic dermatology. She had no qualifications to diagnose dementia or prescribe psychiatric medications. Furthermore, she served on the same hospital committee as Thaddeus and had been a guest at several of Vivian's charity galas. The final piece fell into place when we located Mr. Holloway, the lawyer who had supposedly handled the property transfer. Far from being a real estate attorney, he was a junior associate at Thaddeus's firm whose primary experience was in corporate contract law. When confronted with potential disciplinary action from the Bar Association, he admitted to preparing documents he knew might not be legally sound, acting under pressure from his senior partner. On December 23rd, exactly 2 days before Christmas, we made our move. Armed with court orders, trust documents, and accompanied by Adult Protective Services representatives, Marion and I returned to the Victorian on Winterberry Lane. Vivienne opened the door, her usual composure faltering at the sight of official badges. What is the meaning of this? We're here to see Eliza Calloway, the APS officer stated firmly. We have concerns about her welfare. This is absurd, Thaddeus appeared behind his wife. My mother is receiving excellent care. From a cosmetic dermatologist posing as a geriatric specialist, I countered. That's an interesting definition of excellent. His face paled. You've been interfering in matters that don't concern you. Actually, Marion stepped forward, presenting the court documents. As counsel for the Calloway Family Trust, these matters very much concern us. This house was never yours to claim, Thaddeus. Your grandmother couldn't transfer ownership. Even if she wanted to, which, as we've established, she didn't. The APS officers moved past them to locate Nana while Marion continued explaining the legal ramifications of their actions. I followed, finding Nana in her room, already packing a small suitcase. You came, she said simply, eyes bright with unshed tears. I knew you would. Of course I did. I embraced her, feeling her familiar softness. We're taking you home. She looked confused. But this is home. No, I smiled. Your real home. The lake house in Vermont where you grew up. Imogen is already there, airing it out and stocking the pantry. The whole family is gathering there for Christmas. Everyone except Thaddeus and Vivian, of course. But my things, my Christmas dishes, the decorations, already rescued from the attic and on their way to Vermont. And wait until you see what else we found. I grinned. Remember those handwritten recipe books your mother kept? The ones with all the holiday traditions? They were tucked behind your father's old fishing gear." For the first time in months, Nana's face lit up with genuine joy. "My mother's recipes! Oh, Adelaide, you have no idea what that means to me." As we descended the stairs, Thaddeus was in the midst of a blustering legal threat. "File countersuit for defamation and interference. I have connections throughout the legal system in this county." "Which is precisely why the case has been referred to the state level," Marion replied calmly. "And given the evidence of potential medication tampering, you might want to focus on finding criminal defense representation rather than planning countersuits." Nana stepped forward, facing her son with quiet dignity. "Thaddeus, I loved you enough to believe you when you said you wanted to take care of me. I trusted you because you were my child. That trust was sacred." For a moment, regret flickered across his face, but Vivian stepped between them. "This is ridiculous. We've done nothing wrong. Everything we did was for your own good, Eliza." "No," Nana replied firmly. "It was for your good, for your social standing, your convenience, your desire to possess what wasn't yours to take, and that is why you will not be welcome in my home, any of my homes, until you can understand the difference." The Victorian on Winterberry Lane remained in the trust, eventually becoming a historic landmark and museum celebrating New England craftsmanship and architecture. I was appointed its curator, combining my photography skills with my love for preservation. Nana lived 7 more vibrant years at the lake house in Vermont. She resumed hosting Christmas celebrations there, teaching great-grandchildren how to make her special rosemary bread and cranberry relish. Her mind remained sharp until the very end. Thaddeus and Vivian faced both civil and criminal charges related to elder abuse and attempted fraud. The scandal effectively ended his legal career and her social aspirations. They eventually relocated to Arizona, where they lived in a modest condominium, a far cry from the Victorian mansion they had so desperately tried to claim. The most valuable lesson I learned from this experience wasn't about legal documents or trust arrangements, but about the nature of family itself. True family isn't defined by blood or legal documents, but by love, respect, and the sacred trust we place in one another. Every Christmas Eve, as I help prepare Nana's traditional feast, now hosted at my own home, I remember her words from that final confrontation. Trust is sacred. In honoring her recipes, her traditions, and her spirit, we keep that sacred trust alive for generations to come. I spent that night in a nearby hotel, unable to sleep as my mind raced with everything I'd learned. The image of Nana Eliza sitting in that reduced bedroom, stripped of her treasures and dignity, haunted me. By dawn, I'd formulated a plan. If Thaddeus and Vivian were medicating my grandmother without proper cause and had fraudulently obtained her house, I needed proof. Definitive, irrefutable evidence that would stand up to their inevitable legal challenges. The business card for Marion Winters felt heavy in my pocket. First thing in the morning, I called her office and explained the situation as succinctly as possible. "This is deeply concerning," Marion said after I'd finished. Her voice was measured but resolute. "If what you're describing is accurate, we're potentially looking at elder abuse, fraud, and unauthorized medical treatment. I can see you today at 11. Marion's office was housed in a converted Victorian not unlike Nana's, though this one had been meticulously restored to serve as professional space. The attorney herself surprised me. I'd expected someone older, perhaps contemporaneous with Nana, but Marion Winters appeared to be in her early 40s, with close-cropped silver hair and penetrating green eyes. "I've known your grandmother for 15 years, she explained, gesturing for me to take a seat in her book-lined office. "Eliza consulted me after your grandfather passed away to ensure her affairs were in order. She's one of the most astute, sharp-minded clients I've ever had." I showed her the photos I'd taken of the documents from the secret compartment in Nana's desk, explaining how I'd found them. Marion studied them carefully, her expression growing increasingly grave. "This changes everything," she said finally. "The irrevocable trust established by Winston Calloway, your great-grandfather, means the house cannot be legally transferred the way Thaddeus claims." "So the documents they had Nana sign are invalid?" "Potentially worse than invalid," Marianne replied, reaching for her phone. "They would constitute attempted fraud if Thaddeus and Vivian knew about the trust's existence. Give me a moment." She spoke quietly to someone on her staff, requesting archived files from the 1960s. While we waited, I filled her in on more details: the mysterious Dr. Blackwood, the medication that left Nana foggy and compliant, the systematic dismantling of her authority and dignity within her own home. Marian took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When her assistant arrived with a leather portfolio containing yellowed documents, she compared them carefully with the photos on my phone. "The trust is intact," she confirmed. "Winston Calloway established it in 1963 specifically to protect the family home for future generations. Your grandmother has life tenancy, but the house itself is held in trust. No deed transfer signed solely by her would be valid." "So what happens now?" "First, we need to establish your grandmother's current mental capacity. If she's being improperly medicated, that needs to stop immediately. I'll file an emergency petition for a geriatric evaluation by an independent physician." "Thaddeus sits on the hospital board," I warned. "He has connections throughout the medical community." Marian nodded grimly. "Then we'll bring in someone from out of county, a specialist with impeccable credentials who can't be influenced by local politics. Next, we need to investigate this Dr. Blackwood. A physician prescribing unnecessary medication potentially constitutes criminal behavior." For the next several hours, we developed a strategy. Marian would handle the legal aspects, filing motions to invalidate any purported property transfer, and seeking temporary guardianship for Nana if necessary. My task was to gather information about Dr. Blackwood, about the lawyer who had drawn up the fraudulent deed transfer, and most importantly, documentation of Nana's actual condition versus what was being claimed. As I prepared to leave, Marian asked, "Do you have somewhere safe to stay? If Thaddeus realizes what we're doing, things could get uncomfortable." "I'm at the Millbrook Inn for now," I replied. "I doubt they'll look for me there." "Good. And Adelaide," she added, her expression softening slightly. "Your grandmother chose well when she left that letter for you. Not everyone would have the courage to challenge someone as powerful as your cousin." I thought about the family dynamics that had shaped my life, how Thaddeus had always been the golden child, destined for greatness, while I was the dreamer, the artist, forever falling short of family expectations. Someone had to stand up for her, I said simply. My first stop after leaving Marian's office was the county records department. The clerk, a harried-looking woman named Bethany, seemed suspicious of my request to see recent property transfers for the Winterberry Lane address but couldn't legally refuse. While waiting for her to retrieve the files, I struck up a conversation with an elderly gentleman who was researching historical property boundaries. "Winterberry Lane?" he repeated when I mentioned the address. "That's the old Calloway place. Isn't it? Beautiful Victorian. Been in the same family for generations." "That's right," I confirmed, surprised. "You know it?" He chuckled. "I've been in the surveying business for 50 years, young lady. I know every significant property in 3 counties. Did some work for Winston Calloway back in '63 when he set up that family trust of his. Smart man. Wanted to make sure the house stayed in the family, no matter what." My pulse quickened. "You surveyed the property for the trust?" "Had to establish the exact boundaries for the legal documentation. Winston was particular about including the entire parcel, right down to the old oak at the north corner." He peered at me over his reading glasses. "You're not one of Eliza's grandchildren, are you? You have the look." "I am," I admitted. "Adelaide Thornwood." "Ah, the photographer," he exclaimed. "Eliza shows me your work whenever I stop by. Those architectural studies you did of the covered bridges, magnificent eye for detail." The fact that Nana had been proudly sharing my work warmed my heart and strengthened my resolve. "Mr. Caldwell, Jasper Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell, would you be willing to make a statement about your knowledge of the trust? It could be important." His bushy eyebrows rose, but before he could respond, Bethany returned with the property records I'd requested. I thanked her and retreated to a corner table to examine them. The deed transfer was dated April 17th of the current year, just as Nana had indicated, during her recovery from pneumonia. The document bore her signature, though it looked shaky, uncertain, nothing like her usual confident hand. The notary's stamp belonged to someone named Preston Holloway, and the witness signatures included Janessa Blackwood, M.D. I photographed everything, making sure to capture all the relevant details, then returned to Mr. Caldwell. "Something's not right with your grandmother's property, is it?" he asked perceptively. I hesitated, then decided honesty might serve me best. Someone may have taken advantage of her recent illness to have her sign documents she didn't understand. Documents that shouldn't have any legal standing given the trust you mentioned. His weathered face hardened. "Disgraceful? Eliza Calloway is salt of the earth. Who would do such a thing? Would you be willing to provide a statement about your knowledge of the trust? It could help protect her." "Young lady, I'd be proud to. Here's my card. Call anytime. For Eliza, I'll make myself available." Armed with this unexpected ally, I moved on to my next target, Dr. Janessa Blackwood. Finding information about the mysterious doctor proved more challenging. Her name appeared on the hospital website as part of the geriatric care team, but her bio was sparse compared to other physicians. Just a brief mention of her medical degree, from a university I'd never heard of, with no details about specialized training or board certifications. The hospital wouldn't release any information about her over the phone, citing privacy policies. I decided a more direct approach was needed, and drove to the address listed on her professional profile. The office was located in a sleek medical building on the affluent side of town. The waiting room featured expensive modern furniture and abstract art that matched Vivian's aesthetic preferences perfectly. A receptionist with an artificial smile greeted me from behind a glass partition. "I'd like to make an appointment." "With Dr. Blackwood," I said, "for a geriatric evaluation." "For yourself?" she asked, voice dripping with skepticism as she took in my youthful appearance. "For my grandmother. I understand Dr. Blackwood is quite selective about her patients, but we were referred by Vivian and Thaddeus Calloway." I dropped the names deliberately, watching her reaction. Her demeanor changed instantly. "Oh, Mrs. Calloway's family, of course. Let me check the schedule." She tapped at her computer, then frowned slightly. "Dr. Blackwood is fully booked. For the next 6 weeks, I'm afraid." "That's disappointing. She's been so helpful with my grandmother, Eliza Calloway. I wanted to consult with her about some concerns we have about the current medication regimen." The receptionist's expression flickered with recognition. "You're related to Eliza Calloway?" "I'm her granddaughter," I confirmed. "Could you tell me what days Dr. Blackwood typically sees her? Perhaps I could come along to one of those appointments instead." She hesitated, then said carefully, "Dr. Blackwood doesn't see patients here on Thursdays. That's when she conducts home visits. For her special cases." "Special cases?" The phrasing struck me as odd. "I see. And my grandmother is one of these special cases?" "I really couldn't say," she replied, suddenly formal again. "Patient confidentiality, you understand?" I nodded, then decided to take a risk. "One more question. Does Dr. Blackwood specialize in dementia care? My grandmother's condition has been concerning lately." The receptionist looked genuinely confused. "Dementia? No, Dr. Blackwood's primary specialty is cosmetic dermatology. She handles Botox, fillers, that sort of thing. She gestured vaguely at her own unnaturally smooth forehead. The best in the county. I struggled to maintain a neutral expression. A cosmetic dermatologist prescribing psychiatric medication for a supposed cognitive condition? This was even worse than I'd imagined. Interesting, I managed. Perhaps I misunderstood. Thank you for your time. Outside in my car, I immediately called Marion Winters to relay what I'd discovered. This is deeply troubling, the attorney said, her voice tight with controlled anger. A cosmetic dermatologist has no business diagnosing dementia or prescribing psychiatric medication. We need to move quickly. There's more, I told her. The doctor's signature appears as a witness on the deed transfer documents. And according to the receptionist, she conducts home visits for special cases on Thursdays. This suggests a pattern of coordination that goes beyond coincidence, Marion observed. I'm going to contact the state medical board immediately. In the meantime, I've located a geriatric neurologist from Capital City who's willing to conduct an independent evaluation of your grandmother. Dr. Eleanor Vargas has no connections to your cousin's hospital and has served as an expert witness in elder abuse cases before. When can she see Nana? That's the tricky part. Ideally, we'd bring your grandmother to Dr. Vargas's office, but if she's being closely monitored by Thaddeus and Vivienne, that might be difficult to arrange without tipping our hand. I thought for a moment. What if we created a pretext? Something that would allow Nana to leave the house without raising suspicions? Such as? Christmas shopping, I suggested. Despite what they've told her about not hosting Christmas, Nana would naturally want to purchase gifts for family members. It's a tradition she's maintained for decades. If I suggested taking her shopping, they might allow it, especially if they believe I've accepted their version of events. Marion considered this. It could work. Dr. Vargas could meet us at my office afterward. The evaluation wouldn't take more than an hour or so. I'll make the arrangements with Nana. When? Can Dr. Vargas be available? Tomorrow afternoon would be best. And Adelaide, she added. Be careful. People who are willing to go this far to control an elderly relative's assets might not respond well to interference. I spent the rest of the day researching the third piece of our puzzle, Preston Holloway, the notary who had witnessed the fraudulent deed transfer. His name was easy enough to trace. He was a junior associate at Thaddeus's law firm, just 2 years out of law school. A social media search revealed a nervous-looking young man with thinning hair and an eager-to-please expression. His professional profile boasted about his corporate contract work, but mentioned nothing about real estate law or elder care. Hardly the appropriate background for handling a complex property transfer involving an elderly client. More telling were several photos of him at firm events, standing awkwardly at the periphery of groups centered around Thaddeus. In one image from the firm's holiday party 6 months ago, Preston was visibly starstruck as Thaddeus clapped a hand on his shoulder. The caption read, "Honored to be mentored by the best in the business." Career goals, Legal Eagle. The picture painted was clear, a young, impressionable attorney desperate for approval from his powerful superior, exactly the type of person who might be persuaded to overlook ethical concerns just this once for the sake of his career. The next morning, I called Nana's house, half expecting Thaddeus or Vivienne to intercept the call. To my surprise, Nana herself answered. "Adelaide, I was hoping you'd call. Are you still in town?" Her voice sounded stronger than it had during my visit, more like her old self. "I am," I confirmed. "Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to go Christmas shopping this afternoon. I haven't started buying gifts yet, and I could use your expert advice." "Oh," she hesitated, and I could hear the conflicted emotions in that single syllable. "Well, I'm not hosting Christmas this year, as you know. Thaddeus and Vivienne think it's too much excitement for me. But you'll still want to give gifts, won't you? It's always been your favorite part of the holiday." "Of course," she replied, her voice warming. I've been making lists in my head for weeks, but Vivian has been too busy to take me shopping. Then it's settled. I'll pick you up at 2 o'clock. We can go to Harrington's department store like we always do, and maybe stop for hot chocolate. Afterward. That sounds lovely, dear. I'll have to check with... I heard muffled voices in the background. Then Vivian came on the line. Adelaide? What's this about taking Eliza shopping? I kept my tone light, deliberately casual. Just a little Christmas shopping expedition. Nana always helps me pick out the perfect gifts for everyone. I thought she might enjoy getting out of the house for a few hours. Dr. Blackwood has advised against too much stimulation, Vivian replied coolly. The crowded stores, the noise, it could trigger confusion. We'll keep it low-key, I promised. Just Harrington's, which Nana knows well, and maybe the bookshop. 2 hours, tops. Surely that's not too taxing. There was a pause, and I could almost hear Vivian calculating the optics of refusing such a reasonable request, especially after my unexpected visit had already raised questions about Nana's care. Well, she said finally, I suppose a short outing might be acceptable, but she needs to take her medication before you leave, and I expect her back by 4:30 for her evening dose. Of course, I agreed, trying not to react to the mention of the unnecessary medication. 2 o'clock, then? When I arrived at the house, Nana was waiting in the foyer, dressed in her favorite winter coat, a deep burgundy wool that she'd had for years and still kept in immaculate condition. A silk scarf in complementary tones was draped elegantly around her neck, and she wore her pearl earrings, small touches of her former stylishness that Thaddeus and Vivian hadn't managed to erase. Vivian hovered nearby, her expression a forced mixture of concern and condescension. Remember, nothing too strenuous, she instructed me as if I were a teenage babysitter rather than a woman in my 30s. Eliza tires easily these days. Nana said nothing, but I noticed the slight tightening of her mouth at Vivian's tone. We'll be careful, I assured her, helping Nana into her gloves. Ready, Nana? More than ready, dear. As soon as we were in my car and out of sight of the house, Nana's posture changed. She sat up straighter, her eyes brighter, her movements more decisive. Adelaide, you have no idea how good it feels to be out of that house, she said fervently. I've become a prisoner in my own home. You seem much more yourself than when I visited, I observed, navigating through the tree-lined streets of the old neighborhood. I stopped taking those pills, she confided in a low voice. After you left, I started hiding them under my tongue and disposing of them later. My mind feels clearer already. Nana, what exactly did Dr. Blackwood tell you about these medications? Her brow furrowed. She said they were to prevent anxiety and confusion. That at my age, cognitive decline was inevitable, and these would ease the transition. She shook her head dismissively. Nonsense, of course. I've never had trouble with my memory, and the only anxiety I've experienced lately is due to Thaddeus and Vivian's controlling behavior. Have you ever seen Dr. Blackwood in a proper medical office? Had any cognitive tests? No, she only comes to the house, usually when Vivian is present. She asks a few cursory questions, takes my blood, pressure, and writes prescriptions. Nana's gaze sharpened. Why do you ask? I considered how much to reveal, and decided Nana deserved the full truth. Because Dr. Blackwood isn't a geriatric specialist. Her primary practice is cosmetic dermatology, Botox injections and facial fillers. Nana's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in anger. Are you certain? I visited her office yesterday. The receptionist confirmed it. So she's been prescribing psychiatric medication without appropriate qualifications? Nana's voice was steady, but I could see the hurt and betrayal in her eyes. And Thaddeus and Vivian knew? It appears so, I said gently. There's more, Nana. The house, that paperwork you signed last spring, it was invalid. The property has been in an irrevocable family trust since 1963 when your father established it. You couldn't transfer ownership even if you wanted to. She was silent for a long moment, processing this information. When she spoke again, her voice was steel beneath silk. Take me to see Marion Winters immediately. If what you're saying is true, we have much more important business than Christmas shopping. That's actually where we were headed, I admitted. Marion has arranged for a legitimate geriatric neurologist to evaluate you, someone with no connection to Thaddeus or the local hospital. Are you willing? More than willing, Nana replied grimly. It's time to reclaim what's mine. Dr. Eleanor Vargas was waiting at Marion's office when we arrived. A tall woman with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun. She greeted Nana with professional respect rather than the condescending tone that had become so familiar from Thaddeus and Vivian. Mrs. Calloway, thank you for agreeing to this evaluation. I understand these circumstances are unusual, but I want to assure you that everything we discuss will remain confidential. Nana nodded appreciatively. Thank you, Doctor. After recent events, transparency and professionalism are qualities I value more than ever. The evaluation took just over an hour. Dr. Vargas conducted a series of cognitive tests, reviewed Nana's medical history, and discussed the medications that had been prescribed by Dr. Blackwood. Throughout the process, Nana displayed the sharp intelligence and clear memory that had characterized her all her life. When it was complete, Dr. Vargas's conclusion was unequivocal. Mrs. Calloway shows no signs of dementia, cognitive impairment, or any condition that would warrant the medications prescribed by Dr. Blackwood. In fact, given her age, her cognitive function is exceptionally strong. And the medications themselves? Marion asked. Dr. Vargas's expression grew severe. Inappropriate and potentially harmful. These are powerful psychoactive drugs typically used for severe anxiety disorders, or as sleep aids. Side effects can include confusion, memory impairment, and increased suggestibility. Essentially, they could create the very symptoms supposedly being treated. She turned to Nana. I strongly advise discontinuing these medications immediately. I already have, Nana informed her with a hint of satisfaction. Good, Dr. Vargas nodded. I'll prepare a comprehensive report documenting my findings. This should help counteract any claims about your cognitive capacity. While Nana and Dr. Vargas continued their discussion, Marion drew me aside. This evaluation gives us firm ground to stand on legally, she said quietly. Now we need to address the immediate concern, your grandmother's safety. If Thaddeus and Vivian realize we're building a case against them, they might accelerate their efforts to control her. What do you suggest? Ideally, she shouldn't return to that house today. Does she have somewhere else she could stay temporarily? Other family members, perhaps? I thought about our extended family. Imogen lived 2 hours away and would certainly take Nana in, but her small apartment would be cramped. Uncle Thomas had the space but lived out of state. She could stay with me at the hotel for tonight, I suggested. Tomorrow we could arrange something more permanent. Marion nodded. That would be safest. I'll file for an emergency protective order first thing in the morning. That will legally prevent Thaddeus and Vivian from interfering with her or removing her possessions from the home. When I proposed this plan to Nana, however, she surprised me with her response. I appreciate your concern, both of you, she said firmly, but I will not be driven from my own home. This house has been in our family for generations. My father entrusted it to my care, and I refuse to abandon it now. But Nana, I protested, if they realize what we're doing, then they'll know I'm not the fragile, confused old woman they've tried to make me out to be, she interrupted with flash of her old spirit. Besides, now that I understand what's happening, I can protect myself better. I'll continue disposing of those pills, and I'll be on guard against any new manipulation tactics. Marion and I exchanged concerned glances, but we both recognized the determination in Nana's expression. This was not a woman accustomed to backing down. "At least let me stay with you," I suggested. "I could sleep in one of the guest rooms." Nana considered this, then nodded. "Yes, that would be sensible. Thaddeus and Vivian can hardly object to my having my granddaughter as a visitor, especially with Christmas approaching." "They might," I warned her, "given how they've been restricting family access." "Let them try," Nana replied with a gleam in her eye that I hadn't seen in months. "This is still my house, whatever documents they think they have, and I've spent quite enough time being dictated to by people living under my roof." By the time we returned to Winterberry Lane, it was nearly 5 o'clock, 30 minutes past. The deadline Vivian had set for Nana's return. As expected, she was waiting in the foyer, arms crossed, expression tight with displeasure. "You're late," she said accusingly. "I specifically said 4:30 for Eliza's medication." "We lost track of time," I replied easily. "The Christmas shopping was so enjoyable." "Where are your packages?" Vivienne asked suspiciously, noting our empty hands. "Mostly ideas today," Nana interjected smoothly. "Adelaide and I were discussing options. And dear, I've decided Adelaide will be staying with us for a few days. The hotel is so impersonal during the holiday season." Vivian's composure faltered momentarily. "That's not convenient, Eliza. We have plans, social obligations." "What could be more social than family visiting at Christmas time?" Nana countered, removing her gloves with deliberate calm. "Adelaide can use the blue guest room. It should be aired out, of course." "That room is being used for storage now," Vivian objected. "Then the items can be moved," Nana replied, a new note of authority in her voice. "Adelaide, dear, go ahead and bring in your overnight bag. We'll have dinner in half an hour." The shift in power dynamics was subtle but unmistakable. For perhaps the first time since moving in, Thaddeus and Vivian were no longer dictating terms in Nana's home. The confused, compliant woman they'd cultivated was receding, replaced by the strong-willed matriarch who had run her household for decades. Vivian, clearly unsettled by this change, retreated to find Thaddeus. I used the opportunity to help Nana upstairs to her room. "That felt good," she admitted once we were alone, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I'd forgotten how it feels to simply state what will happen in my own home." "They won't give up easily," I cautioned her. "No," she agreed, suddenly serious. "In fact, I expect tonight will be quite challenging. Thaddeus has his father's temper when crossed." I thought of my late uncle, known for his blustering outbursts when things didn't go his way. "I'll be right down the hall," I assured her. "And Marion is filing for that protective order first thing tomorrow." Nana nodded, then reached into her coat pocket and withdrew something small and metallic, a key. "This is for you," she said, pressing it into my palm. "It opens the cedar chest in my bedroom closet. Inside, you'll find my mother's jewelry and several important family documents that Thaddeus doesn't know about. If anything happens, anything at all, secure these items first." The weight of her trust settled on me like a mantle. "I will," I promised. "But nothing's going to happen. We're going to fix this." Dinner that evening was a tense affair. Thaddeus arrived home shortly before the meal, clearly having been briefed by Vivienne. His attempt at jovial greeting couldn't mask the calculating look in his eyes. "Adelaide! What a surprise. Staying with us, are you?" "How spontaneous." "Christmas is a time for family," I replied, echoing Nana's earlier sentiment. "Indeed," he agreed with a thin smile. "Though our celebration this year is meant to be intimate. Just the three of us." "Four now," Nana corrected him mildly, taking her accustomed seat at the head of the table, a position she had apparently been coaxed away from in recent months, judging by Vivian's startled expression. Throughout the meal, I watched the subtle power struggle unfold. Thaddeus and Vivian repeatedly attempted to talk over Nana, to make decisions without consulting her, to treat her as peripheral, all tactics they'd clearly developed over months of systematic undermining. But Nana, alert and clear-headed without the sedating medications, parried each attempt with a grace born of decades of social experience. When Vivian announced she'd be redecorating the front parlor before their holiday gathering, Nana simply replied, "I think we'll keep it as is this year." The antique furnishings showcase the room's proportions so beautifully, don't you agree? When Thaddeus mentioned that Dr. Blackwood recommended simplifying Mother's routine, Nana responded, "How thoughtful. Please let Janessa know I won't be requiring her services any longer. I've decided to return to Dr. Abernathy's care." Each exchange ended with Thaddeus or Vivienne retreating, regrouping, then trying a different approach. By dessert, their frustration was palpable. Finally, Thaddeus put down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. "Mother, may I speak with you privately for a moment?" "Anything you wish to say can be shared at the table," Nana replied serenely. "We're all family here." His jaw tightened. "Very well. I'm concerned about your medication compliance. Vivienne tells me you were late returning this afternoon and missed your 4:30 dose." "Yes," Nana agreed. "About that. I've decided to discontinue Dr. Blackwood's prescriptions." "They don't agree with me." Vivian gasped audibly. "Eliza, you can't just stop taking prescribed medication. That could be dangerous." "More dangerous than taking powerful psychiatric drugs prescribed by a dermatologist?" I interjected, unable to contain myself any longer. The silence that followed was deafening. Thaddeus's face flushed dark red, while Vivian's drained of color. "I don't know what you think you know," Thaddeus began, his voice dangerously quiet. "But Dr. Blackwood is a highly qualified physician who specializes in Botox and facial fillers," I finished for him. "Yes, we're aware. Just as we're aware that the deed transfer you orchestrated last spring has no legal standing due to the irrevocable family trust established by great-grandfather Winston in 1963. The truth hung in the air between us like a thundercloud about to break." Thaddeus and Vivian exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "Adelaide," Thaddeus said finally, his attorney's composure reasserting itself, "you're clearly confused about some legal matters that are frankly beyond your expertise. Perhaps we should continue this discussion when you're better informed." "I am well informed," I replied steadily. "So is Marion Winters, who will be filing several motions with the court tomorrow morning. So is Dr. Eleanor Vargas, who conducted a thorough geriatric evaluation of Nana this afternoon and found her cognitive function to be exceptional." Vivian's hand flew to her throat. "You took her to another doctor? Without consulting us? Without her medical records?" "I made that decision myself," Nana interjected firmly. "As is my right. I am not incompetent, incapacitated, or confused, despite your best efforts to make me appear so." Thaddeus pushed back from the table abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is ridiculous. Mother, you've been experiencing episodes of confusion for months. One evaluation from a doctor who doesn't know your history proves nothing." "On the contrary," I countered, "it proves everything. Especially when combined with the fact that the medications you've been insisting she take are known to cause confusion and memory impairment as side effects." For a moment, I thought Thaddeus might lose his composure completely. His face contorted with barely suppressed rage, and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. But decades of professional training prevailed, and when he spoke again, his ouch voice was controlled, if icy. "Mother, I think it's best if Adelaide leaves. She's clearly causing you distress and interfering with your care regimen." "No," Nana said simply. "Adelaide stays. In fact, I believe it's time we discussed some significant changes to the household arrangements." The confrontation might have escalated further, but we were interrupted by the doorbell. Vivian, seemingly relieved by the diversion, hurried to answer it. A moment later, she returned with a young man I recognized immediately from his social media photos, Preston Holloway, the junior attorney who had notarized the fraudulent deed transfer. "I apologize for the intrusion," he stammered, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Mr. Calloway, could I speak with you privately? It's rather urgent." Thaddeus's expression darkened further, but he nodded curtly and led Preston to his study. The door closed behind them with an ominous click. "Well?" Nana said into the strained silence that followed. "I believe this evening has been eventful enough. Adelaide, would you mind helping me upstairs? I find I'm rather tired after all." As we climbed the grand staircase together, I could hear raised voices coming from the study. Thaddeus's angry baritone punctuated by Preston's higher, more agitated tones. Something significant was unfolding, but what exactly, we would have to wait until morning to discover. That night, I barely slept. The blue guest room that had once been a haven during childhood visits was now a battleground in a family war I never anticipated fighting. Despite Vivian's protests about the room being used for storage, it had been hastily cleared before bedtime, though evidence of neglect remained. Dust on the baseboards, musty linens, and a pervasive chill that suggested the heat had been redirected elsewhere for some time. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway, too heavy to be Nana's. I cracked my door open to see Thaddeus emerging from his study, papers clutched in his hand, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. He disappeared into the master suite he shared with Vivian, and muffled but heated conversation followed. I considered checking on Nana, but decided against risking drawing attention to her room. Instead, I sent a text to Marion. "Situation escalating. May need emergency intervention sooner than planned." Her response came almost immediately. "On it. Court opens 8 a.m. Stay vigilant." Dawn broke with leaden skies promising snow. I dressed quickly and slipped down the back stairs to the kitchen, hoping to prepare breakfast for Nana before Thaddeus and Vivian awoke. To my surprise, I found Nana already there, dressed in a crisp blouse and wool skirt that harkened back to her usual elegant style. "Good morning, dear," she said, measuring coffee into the percolator, the old-fashioned kind she'd always preferred over modern brewing systems. "I thought we might enjoy some proper breakfast. Vivienne has been insisting on bland oatmeal for months." "How did you sleep?" I asked, noting the shadows beneath her eyes. "Fitfully," she admitted, "but better than many recent nights. It's amazing how clearly one thinks without those dreadful pills." She glanced toward the doorway, then lowered her voice. "Adelaide, there's something we need to discuss before they wake." I moved closer, helping her retrieve eggs and bacon from the refrigerator. "What is it?" "Last night, after you went to bed, I heard Thaddeus on the phone. He was arranging for me to be moved to Cedar Grove Assisted Living, today." Her hands were steady as she cracked eggs into a bowl, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. "Apparently, he's claiming I've become unmanageable at home." My grip tightened on the spatula I'd picked up. "He can't do that. He has no legal authority over your care decisions." "He seems to think otherwise," Nana replied grimly. "I believe he's planning to use those fabricated medical records from Dr. Blackwood to force the issue." "Did you call Marion?" She nodded. "First thing. This morning. She's already on her way to the courthouse with the protective order paperwork, but Thaddeus has connections throughout the county. I'm not sure how quickly the order will be granted." I thought quickly. "We need to get you out of here before he can implement his plan." "No," Nana said firmly, turning on the stove burner with a decisive click. "I told you yesterday, I will not be driven from my own home. If Thaddeus wants to force me into a facility, he'll have to do it in front of witnesses, with me fighting every step of the way. No judge would consider me incompetent after seeing that." "It's risky," I cautioned, admiring her courage even as I worried for her safety. Life is risk, she replied simply. Now, set the table properly, will you? Crystal juice glasses, the good plates. If this is to be our last breakfast in this house for a while, let's make it civilized. I followed her instructions, understanding the symbolic importance of reclaiming these small domestic rituals. By the time Thaddeus and Vivian appeared in the doorway, we had transformed the kitchen into a scene from my childhood. Fresh coffee steaming in silver pots, perfectly cooked eggs, crisp bacon, and homemade preserves that Nana had evidently retrieved from her secret stash. Thaddeus faltered mid-step, clearly thrown by the tableau. Mother, you're up early. As I have been every morning for the past 70 years, she replied pleasantly. Do join us. The coffee is particularly good today. Vivian hovered uncertainly at the threshold. Eliza, you shouldn't be exerting yourself like this. The doctor specifically said. Yes, about that, Nana interrupted, her tone remaining conversational, though her eyes had hardened. I've been meaning to ask, when exactly did you and Janessa Blackwood become acquainted? Was it before or after you decided I needed specialized care? The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Vivian's face flushed, then paled. I don't see how that's relevant. Don't you? Nana poured coffee with a steady hand. I find it extremely relevant that my daughter-in-law's college roommate, with no geriatric training whatsoever, somehow became the authority on my cognitive health. I nearly choked on my coffee. College roommate? Indeed, Nana confirmed. I found Vivian's old yearbook in the attic yesterday while looking for my Christmas decorations. Quite illuminating. Janessa and Vivian, co-captains of the tennis team, roommates for 3 years. She slid a plate of toast toward Thaddeus. Butter? Or would you prefer to continue pretending we don't all know exactly what's been happening here? Thaddeus ignored the toast, his attorney's composure slipping. Mother, I think you're becoming agitated. This kind of paranoid connecting of dots is exactly what concerns us about your condition. Gaslighting doesn't become you, Thaddeus, Nana replied evenly. I taught you better than that. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Vivian moved to answer it, perhaps grateful for the escape, but Nana raised a hand. Adelaide? We'll get it. It's likely for me. I hurried to the front door, hoping to find Marian with the protective order in hand. Instead, I was confronted by 2 unfamiliar men in dark overcoats. Can I help you? I asked, blocking the entrance. We're here for Eliza Calloway, the taller one replied, his tone professionally detached. Cedar Grove Transport Services. We have orders to escort her to the facility this morning. My heart sank. Thaddeus had moved even more quickly than we'd anticipated. I'm afraid there's been a mistake. Mrs. Calloway isn't going anywhere today. Are you a family member? He asked, producing a clipboard. I'm her granddaughter. I see. Well, these arrangements were made by her son, who has medical power of attorney. If you'll just step aside. She does not have power of attorney, I stated firmly, grateful for the legal knowledge Marian had imparted. Any document claiming otherwise is fraudulent and currently being challenged in court. The man exchanged glances with his colleague. Ma'am, we're just doing our job. We have the proper paperwork here, signed by a Dr. Blackwood and Mr. Thaddeus Calloway. That paperwork is based on falsified medical information, I countered. Mrs. Calloway is of sound mind and not subject to her son's authority. If you attempt to remove her from this house against her will, it will constitute kidnapping. The men hesitated, clearly unprepared for this level of resistance. Before either could respond, a sleek black sedan pulled into the driveway, and Marian, Winters emerged, accompanied by a uniformed police officer. Relief flooded through me. Perfect timing. Marian approached briskly, briefcase in hand. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Marian Winters, Attorney for Eliza Calloway. I have here an emergency protective order signed by Judge Harmon 15 minutes ago. She produced a document bearing an official seal. It explicitly prohibits removing Mrs. Calloway from her home or interfering with her autonomy in any way. The officer stepped forward. I'm here to ensure the order is enforced. May I see your paperwork, please? The transport workers surrendered their clipboard, looking increasingly uncomfortable. The officer reviewed it, then handed it to Marian, who examined it with a critical eye. As I suspected, she said. This authorization is based on a medical evaluation by Janessa Blackwood, who is not qualified to make determinations about cognitive capacity. Furthermore, the power of attorney document referenced here is currently under investigation for fraud. She returned the clipboard. I suggest you gentlemen leave immediately. Your services will not be required. They retreated to their van without further argument, clearly eager to remove themselves from the complicated situation. Inside, we found Thaddeus standing in the foyer, his expression thunderous. What is the meaning of this intrusion? Marian handed him a copy of the protective order. This should clarify things. Judge Harmon was particularly disturbed by evidence suggesting your mother has been improperly medicated without informed consent. This is preposterous, Thaddeus sputtered. My mother needs specialized care. She's been exhibiting clear signs of cognitive decline for months. Symptoms that mysteriously appeared around the same time she began taking medication prescribed by your wife's former roommate, I noted. Quite a coincidence. Vivian appeared behind Thaddeus, her usual poise noticeably absent. You have no right to interfere in family matters. Thaddeus is only acting in his mother's best interests. Is that what you call attempting to seize? Control of a multi-million-dollar property through fraudulent means? Marian asked coolly. Because the court may view it differently, as might the state medical board, when they hear about Dr. Blackwood's unethical practices. Nana emerged from the kitchen, her dignity intact despite the chaos unfolding in her home. I believe it's time we all sat down like adults. Officer, thank you for your assistance. Would you care for some coffee before you leave? The officer declined politely, but promised to remain nearby should any further issues arise. With the immediate threat of forced removal neutralized, we gathered in the formal living room, a space that had once hosted countless family celebrations, but now felt like neutral ground in enemy territory. Marian took charge of the meeting, her professional demeanor a stark contrast to the emotional undercurrents swirling through the room. Let me outline the situation clearly, she began, opening her briefcase. Mrs. Calloway has been evaluated by Dr. Eleanor Vargas, a board-certified geriatric neurologist who found no evidence of cognitive impairment. The medications prescribed by Dr. Blackwood, who, I might add, has no qualifications in geriatric medicine, have been deemed inappropriate and potentially harmful. She produced another document from her case. Furthermore, the property transfer that supposedly gave ownership of this house to Thaddeus and Vivian is invalid. The property has been held in an irrevocable trust since 1963, established by Winston Calloway specifically to prevent exactly this type of situation. Thaddeus leaned forward, his attorney's instincts asserting themselves. That trust was dissolved decades ago. I have documentation. Falsified documentation, Marian corrected him. I've spoken with Jasper Caldwell, the surveyor who worked on the original trust paperwork. He confirms the trust remains intact and has never been modified or dissolved. Jasper Caldwell is an old man whose memory can hardly be considered reliable, Thaddeus scoffed. His memory seems considerably more reliable than the sudden cognitive decline you've attributed to your mother, Marian replied evenly. But if you prefer more contemporary evidence, I've obtained the official trust records from the state archives. They make for interesting reading, particularly the clause prohibiting any transfer of ownership outside direct family lineage. Vivian's composure cracked further. This is ridiculous. We've invested thousands in renovations, maintenance, property taxes. While living here rent-free, Nana pointed out quietly, in a home valued at over $2 million in the current market. A heavy silence fell over the room. The extent of what Thaddeus and Vivian had attempted, and how close they had come to succeeding, was beginning to sink in for all of us. Marion broke the silence. Here's what happens next. The protective order ensures Mrs. Calloway remains undisturbed in her home. All medical decisions revert to her exclusively, with Adelaide as her designated healthcare proxy should that become necessary. The fraudulent deed transfer will be formally invalidated by the court, likely within days. She fixed Thaddeus with a stern gaze. Additionally, there will be an investigation into potential elder abuse charges related to the inappropriate medication. Dr. Blackwood has already been reported to the State Medical Board, and preliminary inquiries are underway regarding her prescription practices. Thaddeus's face had gone ashen. This will destroy my professional reputation. You should have considered that before attempting to declare your mentally competent mother incompetent, I said, unable to contain my anger any longer. What exactly do you want? Vivian demanded, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Money? Is that it? Nana shook her head sadly. What I want is something you can no longer give me, Vivian. Trust, respect, the comfort of knowing my family values me beyond what material assets I might provide them. She turned to Thaddeus, and I saw genuine grief in her eyes. You were raised better than this. Your father, for all his faults, understood the importance of integrity. What would he say if he could see what you've done? Thaddeus had no answer, his gaze fixed on the carpet. Marion cleared her throat gently. From a practical standpoint, Mrs. Calloway, we need to discuss living arrangements going forward. While the protective order prevents interference with your autonomy, it might be uncomfortable to continue sharing the house under these circumstances. Nana nodded thoughtfully. I've been considering that. Thaddeus and Vivian will need time to make alternative arrangements. They may remain in the East Wing for a period not exceeding 30 days. She glanced at her son, her expression firm but not unkind. After that, I expect the property to be vacated in the same condition it was in when you arrived 3 years ago. You're evicting us? Vivian's voice rose incredulously. After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done to me, Nana corrected her quietly. And yes, I am terminating our living arrangement. The trust gives me that authority as primary beneficiary during my lifetime. Thaddeus finally spoke, his voice hollow. Where are we supposed to go on such short notice? You own a condominium in the city, Nana reminded him. The one you purchased as an investment property last year. I believe it's currently between tenants. The fact that she knew about this property, one Thaddeus had apparently never mentioned to her, seemed to surprise him. For a moment, I glimpsed the formidable woman my grandmother had always been, beneath the vulnerable exterior Thaddeus and Vivian had tried to exploit. There's one more matter to address, Marion said, producing a final document from her briefcase. Mr. Preston Holloway came to my office early this morning with some concerning information. He has provided a sworn statement regarding his role in the deed transfer and has agreed to cooperate fully with any investigation. Thaddeus's head snapped up. That little... I would advise against completing that sentence, Marion interrupted smoothly. Mr. Holloway's cooperation may be the only thing standing between you and far more serious legal consequences. The meeting concluded shortly thereafter, with Thaddeus and Vivian retreating to their wing of the house in stony silence. Marion promised to return the following day with additional paperwork and updates on the legal proceedings. When we were finally alone, Nana sank into her favorite armchair, one of the few pieces of her original furniture that remained in the main living areas. "Are you all right?" I asked, concerned by the fatigue evident in her face. "Tired," she admitted, but strangely energized as well. "It's been a long time since I stood up for myself that way." "You were magnificent," I told her sincerely. She smiled faintly. "It wasn't just me. Without you, Adelaide, I might have spent my remaining years in a fog of unnecessary medication, watching my home and autonomy slip away piece by piece." "You would have fought back eventually," I assured her. "You're too strong not to." "Perhaps," she said thoughtfully. "But it's so insidious, you know, the way they did it. Small steps, each one seemingly reasonable in isolation. Convincing me I was becoming forgetful when it was the medication causing the confusion. Gradually restricting my activities, for my own good. Separating me from other family members who might have noticed what was happening." She shook her head sadly. "By the time I realized the full extent of their manipulation, I was already isolated and doubting my own perceptions." The rest of the day passed in an uneasy truce. Thaddeus and Vivienne remained sequestered in their wing, occasionally emerging, only to collect mail or make coffee before disappearing again. Nana and I used the opportunity to begin restoring her home to its former state. We started with her bedroom, retrieving personal items from the attic. Photographs, books, the antique quilt her grandmother had made. Each recovered treasure seemed to strengthen her, to restore a piece of the identity that had been systematically stripped away. In the late afternoon, as we were sorting through boxes of Christmas decorations that had been relegated to storage, I noticed Nana becoming pensive, her hands lingering on a hand-blown glass ornament. "What is it?" I asked gently. "I was just thinking about Christmas," she said. "For 50 years, this house has been where our family gathers. Even through divorces, disagreements, all the complexities of family life. Christmas Eve brought everyone together." She looked up at me, her blue eyes troubled. "I don't want to lose that tradition because of what's happened." I understood her concern. The protective order and impending legal actions had secured her home and autonomy, but at the cost of a profound family fracture. What would holidays look like going forward? Who would choose sides? How many relatives even knew? What had been happening? "We won't lose it," I promised her. "The family gathering is about you, your love, your traditions, not about Thaddeus and Vivienne." "But it's only a week until Christmas Eve," she pointed out practically. "The house is in disarray, half my cooking equipment has been packed away, and I haven't even started planning the menu." She glanced around at the boxes surrounding us. "And then there's the decorating. It usually takes days to prepare properly." A plan began forming in my mind. What if we had help? The family has always pitched in for Christmas preparations. Why should this year be any different? Nana looked skeptical. Who would come? Everyone received Vivian's message about the intimate gathering. "Let me worry about that," I said, already reaching for my phone. "You focus on making your list of everything that needs to be done." I started with Imogen, knowing my older cousin would mobilize the family with military precision once she understood the situation. The call lasted nearly an hour as I explained everything that had happened, from the fraudulent deed transfer to the inappropriate medication and Thaddeus's attempt to have Nana committed to Cedar Grove. "That absolute weasel," Imogen fumed when I'd finished. "I knew something was wrong when they started restricting access to Nana, but I never imagined it went this far. Why didn't she call one of us sooner? She was isolated, medicated, and being gaslighted into believing she was losing her cognitive abilities," I explained. Classic elder abuse tactics. By the time she realized what was happening, she was already cut off from most family support. "Well, that ends now," Imogen declared firmly. "I'll start calling everyone. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole clan. How many people do you think the house can accommodate for Christmas Eve?" As many as always, I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. 30, 40 if some people don't mind standing during dinner. Perfect. What about food? Decorations? Does Nana have her recipes? We're still taking inventory, I admitted. A lot of things were packed away or donated without her knowledge. But we'll manage. No, we'll do better than manage, Imogen corrected me. We'll make it the best Christmas Eve this family has seen in years. I'll be there tomorrow morning with reinforcements. Tell Nana not to worry about a thing. True. To her word, Imogen arrived the next day driving a station wagon packed with Christmas decorations, baking supplies, and 3 more cousins. By noon, Aunt Phyllis had joined us with her famous cranberry relish recipe and enough serving platters to feed an army. Uncle Thomas, the retired judge, arrived from out of state by late afternoon, his presence adding another layer of protection against any further machinations from Thaddeus. The house came alive with activity, Christmas music playing in every room, the scent of cinnamon and cloves filling the air, boxes of ornaments and garlands being unpacked and arranged. I noticed Thaddeus watching silently from the doorway of his wing at one point, his expression unreadable, before he retreated back into isolation. That evening, Marion returned with news. The medical board has suspended Dr. Blackwood's license pending investigation, she reported. And the district attorney is reviewing whether to pursue criminal charges against both her and Thaddeus. Criminal charges? Nana looked distressed despite everything that had happened. He's still my son, Marion. I understand, Marion replied gently. And the decision will ultimately be yours regarding whether to press charges. But what they did, particularly the medication aspect, crosses into potentially criminal territory. The DA believes it's important to establish consequences, if only to protect others from similar exploitation. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of more family members, second cousins I hadn't seen in years, great-nieces and nephews who had grown inches since last Christmas, even distant relatives who normally only made it to holiday gatherings every few years. Word had spread throughout the extended family, and they were coming not just for Christmas, but to show support for Nana. By the 3rd day, the transformation was complete. The house gleamed with polished silver and crystal. Evergreen garlands draped the staircases, and the scent of Nana's traditional cookies perfumed the air. More importantly, Nana herself had transformed, standing straighter, her eyes clear and bright, her voice strong as she directed the holiday preparations with her customary precision. Thaddeus and Vivian remained conspicuously absent from these activities, appearing only briefly to collect mail or necessities before retreating to their increasingly isolated wing. The contrast between the warmth and life filling the rest of the house and the cold silence emanating from their quarters couldn't have been more stark. On the morning of December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas Eve, I was helping Nana inventory her serving pieces when we heard the sound of luggage being wheeled across the marble foyer. We emerged from the dining room to find Thaddeus and Vivian, dressed for travel, suitcases packed and waiting by the door. "You're leaving?" Nana asked, surprise evident in her voice. Thaddeus nodded stiffly. "The condominium is available. We've decided it's best to relocate immediately rather than wait for the 30-day period." "I see." Nana's expression remained neutral, though I could sense her conflicted emotions. Despite everything, he was still her son. "Will you be returning? For Christmas Eve?" Vivian gave a brittle laugh. "Hardly. It's quite clear we're no longer welcome in this house." "That's not true," Nana said quietly. "Your actions were unwelcome. There's a difference." Thaddeus hesitated, something like regret flickering across his features. "Mother, He stopped, apparently unable to formulate an apology or explanation that wouldn't sound hollow under the circumstances. "You should know," he said finally, "that Preston Holloway has provided the DA with extensive documentation about everything. There will likely be formal charges next week." Nana nodded solemnly. I suspected as much. Is there anything you can do? The question sounded more desperate than demanding. If you were to indicate you don't wish to pursue the matter. I'll speak with the DA, Nana promised. But Thaddeus, some bridges can't be unburned simply because one regrets starting the fire. He accepted this with a curt nod, then gestured to the driver who had appeared at the door to begin loading their luggage. As they prepared to leave, Nana approached her son and placed a hand on his arm. Despite everything, you are still family. That door remains open, even if the path back requires considerable amends. Thaddeus said nothing, but I saw his composure falter momentarily before he turned away. We watched from the doorway as their car disappeared down the long driveway, a light snow beginning to fall, dusting the landscape with white. Are you all right? I asked Nana as we returned to the warmth of the house. Yes, she said thoughtfully. And no, I've lost a son, at least for now, but I've rediscovered the meaning of true family in the process. She gestured to the house around us, filled with relatives laughing, cooking, and preparing for the celebration to come. This is what matters. Not property or possessions, but the bonds that bring us together, especially when times are difficult. As evening fell, the final preparations for Christmas Eve were nearly complete. The dining table had been extended to its full capacity, gleaming with Nana's best china and silver. The Christmas tree in the grand parlor, a magnificent Fraser, fir that reached nearly to the ceiling, sparkled with ornaments collected over generations. In the kitchen, 3 generations of women worked side by side, preparing traditional recipes passed down through the family. Nana stood at the center of it all, teaching her great-granddaughter how to properly crimp a pie crust just as she had once taught me. I stepped back to capture the scene with my camera, wanting to preserve this moment of restoration and healing. The flash caught Nana's attention, and she looked up, her face illuminated with a joy I hadn't seen in months. Adelaide, she called, beckoning me closer. Come taste this and tell me if it needs more nutmeg. As I joined the circle of women, accepting the offered spoon, I felt a profound sense of rightness. We had fought for this, for Nana's dignity, for her home, for the traditions that bound our family together. And in doing so, we had uncovered a deeper truth about what family truly means. It isn't about property or control or even blood ties. It's about who shows up when you need them most. Who fights for you when you can no longer fight for yourself? Who values you for who you are, not what you can provide? Christmas Eve would arrive tomorrow, and for the 50th consecutive year, this house would overflow with family celebrating together. There would be an empty place at the table where Thaddeus usually sat, a visible reminder of what had been lost. But around it would gather dozens of relatives who had come not just for the holiday, but to stand in solidarity with the woman who had given so much of herself to all of us. In the end, that was the most meaningful gift of all. Not just saving Christmas, but saving the heart and soul of our family itself. Christmas Eve morning dawned with a perfect blanket of fresh snow covering Winterberry Lane, as if nature itself wanted to provide the final touch to our restored celebration. I woke, early, the habit of a photographer accustomed to catching first light, and found the house already humming with gentle activity. Uncle Thomas was stoking the fire in the main hearth, his movements careful and deliberate. Cousin Imogen was arranging evergreen sprigs among the crystal candle holders on the dining table. And in the kitchen, Nana was already at work, her hands moving with practiced precision as she prepared her famous cinnamon rolls, a Christmas morning tradition for as long as anyone could remember. "You're up early," I observed, pouring myself coffee from the percolator. "I thought we agreed you'd rest this morning." "Couldn't sleep," Nana admitted, though her eyes were bright and clear. "Too many thoughts swirling. Besides, these need to rise properly." She gestured to the dough she was kneading with flour-dusted hands. I watched her work, struck by how different she seemed from the diminished woman I'd found just a week ago, as if she'd shed years along. With Thaddeus and Vivian's influence, the transformation wasn't just in her demeanor, but in physical details. Her posture was straighter, her movements more confident, her voice steadier. "Any word from Thaddeus?" I asked carefully. She shook her head. "No, and I don't expect any today. He was always proud, even as a child. Too proud sometimes." She punched down the dough with perhaps more force than necessary. "I spoke with Marion yesterday about the potential charges. She believes the district attorney might be willing to accept a plea arrangement that includes restitution and community service rather than jail time, given the circumstances." "Is that what you want?" Nana considered the question seriously, her hands never pausing in their rhythmic work. "What I want is complicated, Adelaide. Justice without destruction, accountability without permanent estrangement." She glanced up at me. "He's still my son, despite everything. I can hold both truths at once, that what he did was unconscionable, and that I still love him." Her wisdom struck me anew. Even in the wake of such profound betrayal, she maintained the capacity for nuance, for complexity of feeling that transcended simple categories of villain and victim. "Do you think he and Vivian will ever understand what they did wrong?" I wondered. "Vivian? Perhaps not. Her moral compass has always pointed to whatever benefits Vivian," Nana replied with uncharacteristic sharpness. "But Thaddeus, there's still something in him that knows better." I saw it in his eyes when they left. Regret, shame, not just for being caught, but for having fallen so far from the values he was raised with. The morning unfolded in a carefully choreographed dance of preparation, relatives arriving with dishes and decorations, children being assigned simple tasks to keep them occupied and included, last-minute grocery runs for forgotten items. By noon, delicious aromas filled every corner of the house, and the dining table had been expanded to its full glory with all 3 leaves inserted. I was helping arrange the antique crystal salt cellars when Marion Winters arrived, brushing snow from her coat in the entryway. "I hope I'm not intruding on family time," she said, accepting my offer to take her coat. "I wanted to stop by with some updates for your grandmother." "You're hardly intruding," I assured her. "Nana considers you part of this celebration now. In fact, I believe you're already factored into the seating arrangement." Marion looked genuinely touched by this inclusion. "That's very kind. It's been some years since I've experienced a proper family Christmas Eve." I led her to the library, where Nana was taking a rare moment of rest beside the window, watching the continuing snowfall with a cup of tea in hand. "Marion, I'm so glad you could come." Nana brightened at the sight of her attorney. "Do sit down. Would you like some tea? Or perhaps something stronger? The occasion certainly warrants it." "Tea would be lovely," Marion replied, settling into the armchair opposite. "I have some news I thought you should hear right away." I moved to leave them in privacy, but Nana gestured for me to stay. Whatever it is, Adelaide should hear it too. She's been my rock through all of this. Marion nodded and opened her briefcase. "I've received word from the district attorney's office. They've reviewed the evidence provided by Preston Holloway, along with Dr. Vargas's report on your cognitive evaluation and the documentation regarding Dr. Blackwood's questionable medical practices." She withdrew a document and handed it to Nana. "They're offering Thaddeus a deal: formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing, substantial community service hours focused on elder care advocacy, restitution for any financial damages, and a 5-year probation during which any similar offense would result in immediate imprisonment." "And Dr. Blackwood?" Nana asked. "Her situation is more complicated given the professional ethics violations. The medical board has already suspended her license pending a full investigation. Criminally, she's facing charges of prescribing medication without proper indication and potential insurance fraud for billing specialist services she wasn't qualified to provide." Nana absorbed this information with a thoughtful expression. "And Thaddeus?" Has he indicated whether he'll accept the offer? His attorney contacted me this morning, Marion said carefully. He's inclined to accept, but he had one additional request. She hesitated, glancing between us. He's asked if you would be willing to meet with him, alone, before he formally responds to the DA's offer. Nana's hands tightened slightly around her teacup. Did he say why? Only that there are things he needs to say to you that he'd prefer to express privately. I couldn't contain my concern. Nana, after everything that's happened, I'm not sure that's a good idea. What if this is just another manipulation? What could he possibly gain at this point? Nana countered gently. The legal proceedings are in motion, the family is gathered, and the house is secure through the trust. No, if Thaddeus wants to speak with me, I believe it's for reasons beyond strategy. When would this meeting take place? Marion asked. Today, Nana decided, surprising us both. Before the celebration begins. If there's any possibility of healing, even the beginning of it, I want that energy to be part of our gathering. Tonight. Despite my reservations, I respected Nana's decision. Marion arranged the meeting for late afternoon, with the understanding that she and I would remain in the house, though not in the same room. As the day progressed, the final elements of our Christmas Eve restoration fell into place. The massive tree in the grand parlor was decorated with ornaments spanning generations, delicate glass balls from the Victorian era that had belonged to Nana's grandparents, hand-sewn fabric stars made by her mother during the Depression, colorful, ceramic figures painted by grandchildren in school art classes over the decades. Each had a story, a connection to family history that Nana shared with the younger generations as they helped arrange them on the fragrant branches. In the dining room, Aunt Phyllis directed the table setting with military precision, ensuring that each place setting was perfectly aligned, each crystal glass positioned at exactly the right angle. The sideboard groaned beneath platters of appetizers, smoked, salmon on thin rye bread, cheese straws made from Nana's grandmother's recipe, and the special cranberry walnut spread that only appeared at Christmas. As dusk approached, family members began changing into their evening attire, another tradition Nana had always maintained. Christmas Eve dinner was a somewhat formal affair, with men in jackets and ties, women in dresses or elegant separates. I helped Nana select an outfit from her restored wardrobe, a deep burgundy velvet dress with subtle beading at the neckline, accessorized with the pearl necklace my grandfather had given her on their last Christmas together. You look beautiful, I told her honestly as she surveyed herself in the mirror. Her silver hair had been arranged in an elegant twist by Cousin Lily, who worked as a stylist. I feel like myself again, Nana replied, touching the pearls with reverent fingers. For months, Vivian kept suggesting I should wear more appropriate clothes, which apparently meant shapeless sweaters and elastic waist pants, as if aging required surrendering beauty along with everything else. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. It was Imogen, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. Thaddeus is here, she announced, her tone neutral. He's waiting in the library. Nana took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. Thank you, dear. I won't be long. Do you want me to come with you? I offered. She shook her head. No, this is something I need to do alone. She squeezed my hand reassuringly. Don't worry. Whatever happens in that room won't diminish what we've accomplished this week. I watched her walk down the hallway, her bearing regal despite everything she'd endured. Part of me wanted to follow, to position myself outside the library door in case Thaddeus attempted some last-minute manipulation or cruelty. But I resisted the impulse, honoring Nana's wishes for privacy in this delicate moment of potential reconciliation. Instead, I joined the others in the parlor, where the younger children were being entertained with Christmas stories, while the adults put final touches on the evening's arrangements. Uncle Thomas caught my eye from across the room and made his way over, 2 glasses of mulled wine in hand. Worried about her? He asked, offering me one of the glasses. Is it that obvious? He smiled kindly. Only to someone who's known you since you were in pigtails. Your grandmother is stronger than you might think. She raised 4 children alone after your grandfather died, built a business from scratch, and navigated decades of family dynamics that would have broken a lesser person. I know, I acknowledged, sipping the spiced wine. It's just that Thaddeus nearly succeeded in destroying everything she values, her home, her autonomy, her connection to family. How do you begin to forgive something like that? I'm not sure forgiveness is what's happening in that room, Uncle Thomas mused. Understanding, perhaps. Context. The beginning of accountability. He glanced toward the library. Eliza has always had an extraordinary capacity for seeing people as they are. Flawed, complicated, capable of both terrible mistakes and meaningful redemption. It's why she's been the center of this family for so long. When Nana returned 30, minutes later, I immediately noticed a change in her expression. Not happiness exactly, but a certain peace that hadn't been there before. How did it go? I asked quietly, meeting her in the hallway. About as well as could be expected, she replied. Thaddeus may join us for dinner. I've extended the invitation. The rest is up to him. Are you sure that's wise? I couldn't help asking. After everything he did? Nana took my hand, squeezing it gently. Wisdom isn't about making the safe choice, Adelaide. Sometimes it's about making space for possibility, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. At 7 o'clock, precisely, the family gathered in the dining room. I was helping Imogen light the candles on the table when I glanced up to see Thaddeus standing in the doorway, alone, dressed in a dark suit with a red tie appropriate for the occasion. He looked uncertain, almost boyish in his hesitation. I can't believe he had the nerve to show up, Imogen muttered under her breath. Nana invited him, I reminded her. It's her house, her decision. The traditional foods appeared in their familiar sequence. Nana's golden turkey, cranberry relish made to her mother's recipe, chestnut stuffing, Brussels sprouts with bacon, and the special bread pudding that only graced the table at Christmas. Each dish connected us to family history, to celebrations spanning decades in this very room. When the main course was complete, Nana rose for the Christmas toast, another tradition that had continued unbroken for half a century. Candlelight caught the facets of her crystal glass as she raised it. Family, she began, her voice steady and clear, carrying to every corner of the table, is not merely a matter of blood or legal ties. It is a daily choice, a continuous commitment to see one another clearly, to support one another faithfully, and to forgive one another when necessary. Her gaze moved around the table, acknowledging each person present. This past week has taught me much about the true meaning of family. When I needed support most, you all rallied without hesitation. You helped restore not just this celebration, but my sense of self. She paused, her eyes resting briefly on Thaddeus before continuing. Family is also about the courage to acknowledge our mistakes, to make amends, and to begin again with greater wisdom. She raised her glass higher. To family, in all its complexity, with all its challenges, and with all its capacity for restoration and renewal. To family, we echoed, glasses raised in unison. Later, as the evening transitioned to the gift exchange in the parlor, I found myself standing beside Uncle Thomas near the fireplace. Quite a week, he observed, his judicial gaze taking in the scene before us. Family gathered in comfortable groups, children examining wrapped packages with eager anticipation, Nana holding court from her favorite armchair, restored to her rightful place at the center of it all. I still can't believe we pulled it off, I admitted. A week ago, Nana was isolated, medicated, and being systematically stripped of her dignity and autonomy. Now, look at her. Resilience runs deep in this family, he replied. Always has. As midnight approached, The youngest children were put to bed in the various guest rooms, while adults gathered in the parlor for the final tradition of Christmas Eve, Nana's reading of A Visit from St. Nicholas. She held the same leather-bound volume she'd used for decades, the pages worn with handling by generations of family members. Her voice, strong and expressive, filled the room as she read the familiar verses. I glanced around at the assembled family, aunts, uncles, cousins spanning 4 generations, all present because they had refused to let Thaddeus and Vivian's manipulation sever the bonds that held us together. "Merry Christmas to all," Nana concluded, closing the book with a gentle smile, "and to all a good night." In the months that followed, our family story continued to unfold with the complexity that characterizes all human relationships. Thaddeus accepted the district attorney's deal, dedicating his substantial community service hours to establishing a foundation for elder rights advocacy. His marriage to Vivian did not survive the scandal. She filed for divorce within 6 weeks of Christmas, relocating to another state to escape the social consequences of their actions. Dr. Blackwood faced more severe professional repercussions. Her medical license was permanently revoked, and she ultimately pled guilty to multiple charges related to prescribing unnecessary medication and insurance fraud. The case became something of a landmark in our state's approach to elder abuse, via medical means, with several new protective measures implemented as a direct result. As for Nana, she thrived in her reclaimed independence. With the help of a rotating schedule of family members, she remained in her beloved Victorian, though she eventually converted the East Wing into a separate apartment for me. My architectural photography business could operate from anywhere, and I found unexpected joy in this new chapter of my life, becoming the trusted companion to the woman who had shaped so much of who I am. The house itself underwent a renaissance, with Nana's original furniture and treasures returned to their proper places. The Spode Christmas china once again took pride of place in the dining room cabinets. The attic was properly organized, with family heirlooms cataloged and their histories documented for future generations. The gardens, which had suffered under Vivian's neglect, bloomed again under Nana's careful attention. Perhaps most remarkably, a tentative reconciliation began between Nana and Thaddeus. It started with brief visits, always with other family members present, then gradually evolved into a more direct relationship. The trust was slow to rebuild, fraught with setbacks and difficult conversations, but it grew incrementally with each honest exchange. On the first anniversary of that pivotal Christmas Eve, Nana hosted another family gathering, smaller than the holiday celebration, but no less significant. After dinner, she gathered us in the parlor for an announcement. "This past year has taught me the importance of legacy planning," she began, Marion Winters standing supportively at her side. "Not just financial arrangements, but the passing on of values, traditions, and the wisdom hard-won through difficult experiences." She revealed that she had established a new, more comprehensive trust for the Victorian, one that ensured it would remain a family gathering place for generations to come, with specific provisions to prevent any future manipulation or exploitation. More surprisingly, she had also created a foundation dedicated to elder advocacy, with a particular focus on protecting older adults from financial and medical exploitation by family members. "The painful chapter we experienced last year has been transformed into something meaningful," she explained. "Every year, this foundation will help dozens of seniors recognize and escape similar situations before they lose everything." Most touching of all was her acknowledgement of Thaddeus's contributions to this work. Through his community service and legal expertise, he had helped shape the Foundation's approach in ways that might have been impossible without his first-hand understanding of how such exploitation occurs. "Redemption is rarely a straight path," Nana observed, her gaze meeting her son's across the room. "But when it's pursued with genuine remorse and consistent action, it can lead to growth none of us might have imagined possible." As I looked, Around at my assembled family that evening, I reflected on how close we had come to losing not just a Christmas tradition, but the heart and soul of our family itself. Nana's strength, wisdom, and capacity for both justice and mercy had preserved something precious that had almost slipped away. In the years since, I've come to understand that the true ownership of a home isn't about whose name appears on a deed or trust document. It's about who creates the spirit of the place, who transforms mere rooms and furnishings into a sanctuary where generations can gather, connect, and belong. By that measure, the Victorian on Winterberry Lane has always belonged to Nana Eliza, and through her, to all of us who carry her legacy of resilience, dignity, and unwavering family love in our hearts. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories, right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.